Do you ever sit back and just think, I wonder, or I reckon, it would be nice if we could combine two certain, or maybe more than two, eras in time. I think, I think, but do you ever think that would be nice? I often sit back and think that would be very nice. Because, for example, this morning, on my way here, I'd had a few detours, did a few things, and on my way past, I noticed that there was a particular part. There used to be a park in this car park, and there was a pathway, and you could go through some woods into a clearing with a few ponds in it, paths and things. It was nice, bit of like a meadow, but it was cut for you. It was nice. I noticed that this was fenced off, and I know there was a person living in a car there. Anyway, what I'm saying is, I decided to go and have a look to see why it was fenced off, what's changed, what's happened, why. They all of a sudden decided to fence off this pathway. And I've got something in my eye, my apologies. And I noticed, I think that's a bug in my eye that I got from the woods. Anyway, walking around these woods, and I noticed, as I always notice, because I notice a lot of things, and rubbish particularly stands out to me all the time. You see rubbish and litter everywhere, and it always stands out to me, and I always say to people I'm with, or just to myself, this is horrific, awful. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is, I think it'd be nice to combine, let's just say, the 1950s and 60s, somewhere around that era, maybe a bit before, but I'm going to say 50s and 60s, because then, well, even the 40s I suppose, but 50s and 60s, I wasn't alive then, but obviously I know people that were, and they tell me what it was like. I'd like to combine the caringness, or the impression of caringness that I get from stories from people and from watching stuff on the TV. People cared about things then. Yeah, there was litter bugs. Yeah, there was people who threw bottles and things. Of course there was. It's just the way human nature is. And if you was alive in the 50s and 60s and you're old enough to remember what it was like, please do put in the comments, am I wrong or am I right? I would like to combine that so that there was less litter around, less people throwing rubbish about, less fly tipping and all that kind of stuff. So that era of that sort of time, 50s and 60s, with modern day technology, but by that I don't necessarily mean a lot of it, because a lot of modern day technology I think is very evil. For example, the internet is extremely evil. Yeah, it can be good. Yeah, you can go and buy stuff and you can look things up at the drop of a hat. You can do all kinds of things. You can connect with people you wouldn't, like family members that are in Australia or if you're in Australia, family members that are in America or England or anywhere. You can talk all the way around the world, which is great. But I think the evilness has outweighed any goodness, because you innocently go and buy something from a legitimate shop. Let's just take, for example, Argos, which is a shop chain in England and maybe other countries, I'm not sure, but it's a big one, a trusted shop. You can trust them to some extent. At the point, you'll see in a minute. So you put your details in that, you make an account, you buy some stuff. Now there is, and I'm not saying Argos have done this, but there is the chance that your information will then be sold to people, and we all know that it happens. You put your details out there on the internet and people out there buying it, companies dodgily selling it to them for money, because it's all about money, so it's tricky. But I'd like to combine, and also back then it seems, I know some things were bad, like they didn't have technology or things, and to make things nice, to make things well as they do now, structures, skyscrapers and things. Very, very clever these days. But even back in the 50s and 60s, they were making buildings like that. So it'd be nice to combine all that kind of information, all that kind of knowledge and technology with people's mindset back in the 50s and 60s. You know, when they designed and made something, they made it look nice. Cars looked a lot better than they do these days, you know. They used bigger engines than they do these days. Bloody, you get big people carrying cars with 1 litre engines in them these days, whereas back then you'd have had a 2 litre or 2.5 litre. Much, much better. Everything was better than what they made. You know, you get a car these days, a classic car driving around, and you put it up against a modern day car and you think that car is much better than anything modern these days. There's too much technology in cars these days, you know. Everything was more simple back then. So not only did you have people caring more, in my opinion, again, if you was alive back then and you've got first hand, please do tell me. But from just talking to people that I know that were alive back then, my parents and other people, I work with people, the industry that I work in, there's a lot of people that are a lot older than me and they were alive back then, and it's interesting to hear what it was like back then. I'm that sort of person. I always ask questions, you know. If a lot of the people that I knew that were 8, 90, 100 years old are dead now, but I always ask them the question, and even now if I come across someone that's 90, 95 years old, I always ask, what was it like when you were a kid? You know, because to me it's fascinating. And I just get the impression that although there wasn't technology and appliances were harder to use, and you know, there wasn't things around which make your life easier these days. Life was harder back then. You know, you had to go out every day to do your daily shop. You know, you didn't have a lot of money. A lot of people were a lot poorer than they are these days, even though people think that they're poor these days. They're not. Back then people were poor. You know, you lived in houses that didn't have heating and all sorts. I know all of that. A lot of you that are old enough are probably going to comment, you know, life's easy these days. You don't want to go back there. And I agree. You know, it's nice to have a home with carpets and doors and windows and insulation and heating and television to watch. But that's why I'm saying I'd like to combine it. I'd like to combine the 2 eras or 3 eras. You know, and when you see people these days, technology is good, but technology is also evil. Because these days, for example, I'll give you an example, right? This is mad. We went to a kids' party the other day, and even from my era, kids' parties, when I was a kid, I remember them. The parents would turn up, they'd sit down. You'd go off to play, the parents would sit there. Blah, blah. You're playing around bouncy castles, whatever the party is. Soft play areas, whatever sort of party it is. Even if it's a McDonald's party, you're having fun. But it was at this kid's party, right? And our kid was the only one that didn't have a phone or a tablet. There was bouncy castles. You know, there was footballs and bikes and things. It was in like a big garden. 2 bouncy castles, footballs, bikes, trampolines to play on, all sorts, and other kids to play with, obviously, friends. But every parent bring with them, and bearing in mind these are only 4 or 5-year-old kids, and up to the age of 9, because it was a 9-year-old's party, but the ages went up obviously because brothers and sisters also come along with the other kids. They're all drinking fizzy drinks full of sugar, right? These kids, it's mad. And their parents all bring along the children's tablets. Every bloody kid was sitting on a bouncy castle, more or less. There was 1 or 2 that were bouncing around with a tablet in their hand, like an iPad or a Samsung version or something like that. Watching, I don't know what they're watching, YouTube probably, I don't know. And I just think it's mad. Why would you bring that? I said to my missus, like, what's this all about? Why would you go to a kid's party with bouncy castles and things? Why do they need to bring this? It's because they're conditioned. They think they need it. You know, they can't go without it. They can't just go and play. They've got to have this tablet, sit on the bouncy castle and watch something, rather than bounce and enjoy themselves and bounce around with their friends. And I think that's mad. I actually think it's crazy. And the amount of fizzy drinks, Coca-Cola and Fanta and all that, these 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old kids were drinking out of the cans and all that kind of stuff. It's mad. It really is crazy. And they'll wonder why they're fat. A lot of them were. You know, a 5-year-old kid shouldn't be so fat that they're waddling. You know what I mean? They should be running around lean. You know what I'm saying? Not waddling around and can't get up a ladder on a bouncy castle because they're so fat. And you notice every single person these days is clutching their mobile phone. Clutching it. They can't not have it. They walk around with it in their hands. If they haven't got a pocket, I see a lot of women with dresses, no pockets, and they haven't got a handbag. They're clutching their mobile phone. Mobile phones are handy if you're in an emergency or you're in trouble or something, or you need to make a call, you can do. But I just think it's mad that all these people can't go without them. I mean, at my one, for example, I let it go dead. It goes flat. My wife says, I've sent you a text. She's sitting on the settee. I've sent you a text. Alright. Where's your phone? Well, bloody bedroom table, but it's dead. It's been dead since about 1 o'clock this afternoon. Oh, go and charge it and read the text. You're sitting next to me, woman. Do you know what I mean? So, I think that's crazy. So I would like to combine that sort of thing. Put in the comments, if you could, right? And obviously, if you're old enough to remember, would you like to combine? We might not like to. You might be old enough, and you might say good riddance to the 50s and 60s. Yeah? You might say good riddance. I hated it then, it's better now. Fair enough. Put that in the comments. Tell me. And it doesn't have to be 50s and 60s. Any era that you were alive in, or maybe that you weren't alive in, but you know a lot about. It's just to say, for example, I don't know, the 1800s. You might know a lot about the 1800s, and obviously no one's going to be alive now that was alive then. But you might know a lot about the 1800s, and you might think, well, I'd like to combine some things from there with this time and that time. I'd love to hear what you would love to do, if you could. If you had free reign, and you could take certain snippets out of eras and put them together to make things how you'd like them. Please, I'd love to hear it. But I definitely think the way things were made, the design of buildings, cars, people's morals and thinking, you know, were from the 50s and 60s were what I would call good, what I would call how I would like it to be. Combine it with the modern technology in hospitals and things, because obviously that's good. Obviously back then there wasn't technology to keep people alive if they had an accident or something, or fix bones and do transplants and things. I think a lot of that is good. All this gender stuff, you know, I'm not going to talk about that too much because I don't want to cause some sort of riffle or ruffle anyone's feathers, but when it comes to that, I think if you're a woman and you want a cock put on, or if you're a man and you want a fanny put on, you need to pay for it. Don't go doing the old mental health thing. Oh, I was born in the wrong body. Oh, it's making me feel ill in the head. And the NHS goes, oh, that's alright. We'll spend all this money on giving you a fanny when you're perfectly healthy as a man. No. If you're ill, technology is good. You know, if someone's genuinely ill, cancers and all this other stuff, heart attacks, that's good. So I'd love to combine modern day health care stuff, you know, modern day hospitals, with just the morals and ethics of the 50s and 60s, and the way that things were made and manufactured. You know, cars were looking much better. They used better engines. Yeah, I think that would be nice. People, you know, not as much litter around. You see television, reality life television programs, you know, and things like that, and archived footage from the 50s and 60s, looking around streets. And I'm not on about films and stuff, because obviously they're a set, I know that. I'm on about live, actual, not live, but actual reality footage, you know. There's no litter on the streets. And there is a litter picker person going around picking up the little bits what are there. You know, and people are just so much slower. Not, I don't mean mentally slower. I mean all the rushing. There doesn't appear to be as much people rushing around, you know, wanting to just get to places. There just seems to be more patience in people, you know. Oh, we'll get there when we get there. We'll do this, we'll do that, you know. None of this rushing, and people just have time. That's the impression I get from someone who's born in the 90s. Alright? But anyway, that's what I think. Yeah, definitely. I think this video's gone long enough, but just something else I've just thought of, because I'm sitting in a car park at the moment. I'm waiting for the shop to open so I can go and get my weekly shop, food shop. Something else that just popped up in my head is food. I mean, obviously hygiene in bakeries and shops and restaurants and everything else back in the 50s and 60s wasn't what we would call good today. But the way I look at it is, it couldn't have been that bad. Otherwise, all of you lot that are old enough wouldn't have survived. You know what I mean? And the ingredients and things these days, I know back then, you know, people probably didn't really know the effects of sugar and stuff like that. So that I know food was full of sugar, and they just whacked ingredients in. And these days, there's more research and awareness, I suppose is the right word. It sounds a bit gay, but awareness of what sugar does to you and all that kind of stuff. And people are like going sugar free and all this stuff. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, but I do think that back then food had less preservatives in it. These days, food's got so much preservatives in it because people want them to last. Back then they didn't have that. Food was fresher, as far as I know. That's why people did almost a daily shop or an every other day shop. They didn't do a week, from what I know, alright? So if you're old enough, again, don't have a go at me. Just tell me, is that how it was? You did a shop every other day. You went down to the shop, you got what you wanted for dinner, the ingredients, what you wanted for dinner, a loaf of bread or whatever, and you do the same again the next day. That would be the wife's job, the woman. The woman has a great, you know, a lot of people say, oh, it's derogative to say the woman lives in the kitchen, does the cooking, does the shopping. I'm the opposite. I think that the woman should be bloody celebrated. That is, you know, that is what, I can't say what she should do. That, you know, some of you might get annoyed with that, but I think the man goes out, earns the money, gives it to the woman, the wife of the family, the head of, you know, a lot of people say the man's the head of the household, which, fair enough, but I think the woman's just as important. She goes out and gets the food, she cooks the food, puts it on the table, looks after the kids, cleans the house, you know. That's, you know, anyone who says, you know, women aren't as important, or men don't see women as important, well, think of it this way: without you women doing what you do, if you still do it, getting the food, cooking the food, looking after the house, looking after the children, there wouldn't be a household, you know. It's all about teamwork, and I think it doesn't have to be that way. The woman can go to work and the man can, but I just think it's teamwork. I don't like it when people say, you know, outdated views, the women did all the cooking and all that kind of stuff. That's outdated. I don't like it when people say that, because, you know, I've got great respect. I think that's how it should be. The women should do that and the man goes to work and brings home the money. But I've got great respect for women who do that, because it's great, you know. Cooking a nice meal for your family, you should be proud of yourselves, you know. You cook a nice meal for your family, you keep a nice home, you bring up the children, you know. The man goes to work, earns some money, gives it to the woman. The woman then takes over and does her bit. And while the man's going out and earning more money to do the same again. It's teamwork. And I think that was good back then, you know. The woman stayed at home, done all that stuff. The man bring in the money. Teamwork. It's the way it should be. Teamwork makes the dream work. I don't support the view of women are derogatized, or whatever the word is, seen as lower status because they stay at home and just cook food. It's important to have good food. Anyone who can cook food well and has passion in it and does that for their family or for their husband and children, massive respect. Massive respect. Brilliant. Anyway, it's probably gone on long enough now. Probably waffled a lot of stuff, and most people probably got bored of it anyway. But yeah, as I say, I've said it before, stick it in the comments, you know. Or maybe you love living in today's era, you know, where people are stuck to phones, walking around like zombies all the time. They'd rather talk through technology, through a phone or text message, rather than talking to someone who's in the next room, you know. Yeah. Put it in the comments, as I say, your views on the topic, or what would you do if you could, you know, what would you take out of modern life and bring back from an older life, or maybe the opposite, what would you take out of an older life and bring, you know, you wish they'd invented further on, earlier on. Anyway, cheerio you lot, thanks for watching, all the best. Treat people nicely, treat people how you want to be treated, because then that way we should all have a nice happy life, you know. But also be quite forgiving on people, because no one's perfect. Yeah. If you see someone that's not quite, and you think to yourself, oh, they're a bit rude, or they haven't quite done that right. No one's perfect, everyone's different. People like to be different. If they're almost the same, the world wouldn't be the world. The world is flavourful because everyone is different. Cheerio you lot, all the best.